Namo Buddhaya, Namaskar, and good evening, everyone. And we are here in the Moontails. And Moontails is the channel of Mogalmari Buddhist Association, and Mogalmari Buddhist Association is situated in Mogalmari Buddhist archaeological site. And this site is from the Asukan era. And this Mogalmari Buddhist archaeological site is in a prominent position in Indian cultural map. So, thank you everyone. And today we are going to discuss on the topic yoga and mindfulness, a path to inner peace. And we are here. I'm Dr. Aniket Mahapatra and my friend Dr. Atuna Pradhan. And today uh, we have got our eminent personality, Dr. Lyudmila Klasanova. She is from Norway. And welcome, Dr. Klasanova. You are most welcome. And Namo Buddhaya. And we know yoga and mindfulness offer powerful tools for cultivating inner peace by harmonizing the body, mind, and spirit through breath control, physical postures, and meditative awareness. They help to reduce stress and enhance emotional balance. Regular practice fosters self awareness and a deeper connection with the present moment, paving the way for lasting tranquility. And we know about Dr. Klasanova's work contributing field of Buddhism, and Dr. is a Bulgarian scholar. Am I audible? No? And
Yeah.
a lecturer specializing in Indo-Tibetan Buddhism, women in Buddhism, and Buddhist art. She earned her PhD in Indian and Tibetan literature and culture from Sofia University, St. Clement Ohoritsky, where she has been teaching since 2008. In addition, she works as a research assistant in religious studies at the University of Varga in Norway, where she completed a master's degree in religious studies. She has contributed to various academic publications and multiple articles for Buddhist Door Global. We know very much the Buddhist Door Global and often we read, where she has served as a correspondent, writing about Buddhism in Tibet, Mongolia, and Western Europe. She is also a yoga teacher with extensive experience. When yoga is mentioned, so India is very much connected in this tradition and yoga also in Buddhism. So now we are inviting Dr. Klasanova. Floor is yours, ma'am.
Namaste. Dhanyavad. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir, for the presentation. And thank you very much for all of you, Mughal Mind Association, for the invitation. It's a great honor for me to participate in this online gathering. And thank you very much for suggesting the topic. Our discussion today, it's a very inspiring yet very broad topic. So I will try to discuss several aspects and focus on different points related with this wonderful subject. And basically, what a beautiful way to begin our talk and any discussion on Buddhism with peace, with Shanti, Shanti or Shiva in Tibetan, in our turbulent world. In this world and deep within ourselves, what we need the most is peace. And as Buddha Shakyamuni says, peace comes from within. Do not seek it without or outside. So when we speak about inner peace or antarika shanti, in Buddhism, it refers to a deep, unshakable state of calmness, of clarity that arises from letting go of craving, aversion, of delusion. It's not simply the absence of external conflict, but it's the presence of inner freedom. That's why in Buddhist terms, in Buddhist teachings, inner peace is often described as nirvana itself, as the ultimate peace, the cessation of dukkha, suffering, the extinguishing of fires of negative emotions like greed, hatred, delusion. And peace is also related with equanimity, upekkha, a balanced, calm mind, unaffected by duality of gain and loss, prize, blame, pleasure, pain, and so on. And it also the clarity of the mind itself, the serenity of chitta prasada, a luminous and peaceful mental state. So it's a very beautiful, profound way to think about inner peace. And of course, as always in Buddhism, just thinking, speaking, discussing, preaching, any wisdom of his philosophy is never enough. So the theory is just the half path, half part of the whole Buddhist puzzle, mosaic. So we always think about theory and practice together. And I will try to go through the theoretical aspect, of course, in terms that we are having this online streaming, which I'm again very grateful for. But keeping in mind that when we talk about inner peace, yoga, mindfulness, the most precious aspect is always concern our inner practice on a daily life basis. And if we're really honest, there is not much to talk about mindfulness and peace. It is something that we need to apply and to search for it every day in every situation of our life. But anyway, as far as we try to put it in the words, I will try to have one picture, let's say, of different aspects of Buddhist philosophy in terms of Theravada, Mahayana, Vajrayana Buddhism, talking about inner peace through the prism of yoga and mindfulness. So the path to inner peace, it can include also the ethical principle, shila in Sanskrit, which means that the inner peace starts with a very clean, conscious intention, avoiding harming others. So in a way that's related with ahimsa, non-violence, not harming others, ethical discipline through our speech, through our actions. And this is also one way to establish the foundation for calm or peaceful mind. Also, meditation is another path to inner peace. Samadhi. Through practices like shamatha, concentration, the mind becomes focused, still, spacious. And another direct path to inner peace is mindfulness itself. Being fully present, help us stop reliving the past, fearing the future. And this simple awareness is a doorway again to inner calmness. The wisdom itself, Rajna, seeing things as they truly are, impermanent, sometimes seeing the real nature of self, or in Buddhist sense, not self, anatma. This also leads to non-attachment and indirectly to inner peace. So our mind is like a reservoir of peace and happiness naturally. But sometimes we are unable to manifest that inner joy, inner calmness, because it remains buried deep in our mind due to being clouded, covered by daily distractions, afflicting emotions, and so forth. So in Buddhist traditions, the peaceful mind is the true natural state, mind itself, which is merely obscured in, let's say, us, in us as sentient beings. So Buddhism offers a rich path toward liberation, and yoga and mindfulness are probably the most transformative tools that we can use, again, on a very simple and regular basis. So their origins within the Buddhist meditative tradition. And when they are practiced together, yoga and mindfulness, they guide the mind and the body toward stillness, clarity, and peace in a very holistic or somatic approach. So usually we think, okay, yoga works for the body, mindfulness for the mind, awareness. But of course, when we talk about yoga, it's always focus is always not only on the physical, but also emotional, mental, and why not social, global level as well. So when we combine yoga and mindfulness together, they can deepen our experience with the meditation itself, with the spiritual practice. They can reveal the impermanent non-self, the real nature of reality in the philosophical sense, and they can help us to build resilience, compassion, karuna, develop these positive qualities within us. So when we perform, for example, movements or asana postures with awareness, mindfully, or breath awareness, so whenever we embody the presence of ourself, this brings harmony between body and the mind, which is the true union of prajna and karuna, wisdom and compassion. So I will start briefly with the first part of our topic, the yoga. Of course, as I said, it's so broad and it provides us so many possibilities, so many doors to open and to walk through. But when we talk about yoga, of course, we first of all think about the Indian yoga, Hindu, if you want Hinduism, about Hatha yoga, and all this different variety of yoga. But when we connect yoga with Buddhism, in Buddhism, yoga is not limited to physical postures, of course. It refers to the whole path of training toward enlightenment, the final goal of the Buddhist path. The term itself, as we know from the Sanskrit, yuj, to unite, it refers to the union, discipline, and spiritual practice which aim to cultivate prajna, wisdom, and the ethical principle, shila, and concentration, samadhi, all together in one union. And Buddhism itself incorporates its own sophisticated yogic systems, especially in Mahayana and Vajrayana context. So Mahayana Buddhism introduces more refined yogic frameworks, often through, for example, Yogacharya, philosophy of Asanga and Vasubandhu, which describe consciousness transformation through meditative insight and also bodhisattva practice. Bodhisattva, these beings who have committed themselves to reincarnate again, to come back to this work and help to elevate the suffering of all sentient beings, even though they have the potential for awakening. So some of the key yogic terms in the context of mainly Mahayana tradition includes the shamatha, calm abiding, literally, or shine in Tibetan, or insight, vipassana, or cultivation of shunyata, emptiness, again in the Mahayana context. And cultivation, meditation on emptiness always goes with karuna, compassion. And in a Vajrayana sense, or let's say Tibetan Buddhism as one part of the Vajrayana Buddhism, yoga becomes a highly technical system involving deity visualization, subtle body work with subtle channels, and direct realization. So some of the key Vajrayana yoga systems, for example, the so-called generation stage yoga or Utpatikrama, Kerim in Tibetan, when visualizing oneself as a deity helps to transform the perception, or the so-called deity yoga. There is also a completion stage yoga, Nishpanakrama or Tsokrim, when working with the subtle body like channels, winds and drops, or nadi, prana, bindu, talum, tigle in Tibetan. This helps to dissolve the ordinary consciousness into clear light awareness. So there are 6 yogas of Naropas, for example, which include this inner fire, Kumu practice, Chandali in Tibetan, dream yoga, illusory body, and so on and so on. So it's a huge complex. So maybe we need to organize one big conference only on the subject yoga in Vajrayana tradition, for example. So in Mahamudra Dzogchen tradition, there are practices of direct recognition of the nature of mind, considering some of the highest yoga. And because, as I said, it's a very broad subject, I was personally trained in the tradition of Tibetan yoga, mostly related with the Lyudmila tradition in Namdroli Monastery and different Paleo centers. And one of the specific things, and in a way contradictory nowadays, is whether the Tibetan yoga is secret or not, whether teachers and practitioners are allowed to share publicly or not. It's a very open discussion, and the time that we're living with all this possibility for online transmissions, empowerment, teachings, practicing of example, it's in a way give us many opportunities, but from another point of view, it limits another abilities to experience the direct connection one way with authentic traditions, for example, and another way our own personal growing. So I leave it as an open question whether we should speak openly about secret, initially practice like Tibetan yoga, Tsalm Tigla, for example, or we are free to use directly the benefit of this practice and to share it, speaking openly about it. Instead of taking a position in this ongoing discussion, I will recommend some, for example, to people who have never practiced probably Tibetan yoga. There are many different ways, materials, teachers, course, traditions, and so on, which can be available. Or just example, if we, based on the Tibetan teachers, some different aspects of Tibetan yoga, like Kunye. Here is the book of Tartan Tulku, or Tibetan yoga in points of view of Yantra yoga, Chogyam Namkhay Norbu Rinpoche, or Nejang tradition, which is presented nowadays by Dr. Neither Chanaksang or you see Tibetan yoga in the Bon tradition. So there are many different varieties. So this is just example of a book related to the practice of Tibetan yoga and some theory. Ian Baker, amazing book about Tibetan yoga. And the last one is recently, I just saw it today, and I'm hurried to share it in our presentation, the book about Tibetan yoga with a chapter on Hatha yoga in Vajrayana context, extremely interesting topic. So instead of going deeply into the Tibetan yoga, I will focus more on the mindfulness in a more kind of a theoretical aspect in terms of classification. But if there is some question or wish from your side to discuss more the different aspects of Tibetan yoga, both on the theoretical and practical level, I'm open to continue this conversation. But before that, we can talk a little bit more about mindfulness as a central concept and practice, which is rooted in the ancient term smriti, which literally means, or we translate as mindfulness, smriti, or sati in Tibetan, or drempa in Tibetan. Sorry, sati in Pali and drempa in Tibetan. So, smriti, like to remember or to keep the mind, if we can translate it literally, the same with Drempa in Tibetan. So mindfulness itself plays a critical role in both early Buddhist teachings and in the later Mahayana and Vajrayana traditions. Through its interpretation, through emphasizes that can differ across, yes, different schools, traditions, and of course in our modern time. So mindfulness is in a way the heart of the Buddhist practice. It's a central in all Buddhist traditions, one or another ways. It means, as I said, remembering to be aware, observing the experience without clinging, without aversion. So mindfulness leads to vipassana, and ultimately to liberation from, as I said, dukkha, from suffering. And mindfulness in early Buddhism, if we can focus briefly to first Theravada tradition, I will propose different types of classification, categorizing the concept in one or different text, for example, just to show that mindfulness can be comprehended in a very in variety of methods and ways. So mindfulness is like a mental glue. I like this expression of glue of the mind that you can stick to something, which keeps our attention from losing the object. So it appears in different contexts, in different classifications, including in the Noble Eightfold Path. It was mentioned yesterday during your discussion. So Arya Ashtanga Marga is fundamental, Eight Noble Path, which was told by Buddha Shakyamuni in his very first teaching, the Fourth Noble Truths. So as we all know, the Eightfold Path, right views, right intention, right speech, right conduct, right livelihood efforts, mindfulness, and concentration. So mindfulness comes right here as the seventh of the Eightfold Path, as the right mindfulness, Samyak Smriti. And in the Pali Canon, mindfulness is not clearly laid on the in the foundation of the Buddhist philosophy. And one of the most fundamental sutra texts related to mindfulness is the Satipatthana Sutta, the discourse on the foundation of mindfulness. And the Satipatthana Sutta and subsequently created Maha Sutta, or the Great Discourse on the Foundation of Mindfulness. These two texts are the most celebrated and widely studied discourses in the Pali canon of the Theravada Buddhism, acting as the foundation for contemporary Vipassana meditation practice. These discourses stress the practice of mindfulness for the purification of beings, for the overcoming of sorrow, lamentation, for the extinguishing of suffering and grief, for walking on the path of the truth, for the realization of nirvana itself. So it has a different benefit. And Satipatthana Sutra described the so-called four foundations, which means literally Satipatthana, which concern the question how mindfulness is applied in Buddhist teachings and practice for spiritual development, mental clarity, and liberation. So they refer to the close application of mindfulness to the body, feelings, mind, and phenomena. So that's what they're for. And the first one, the mindfulness of the body, or kaya samviti. It consists of very practical aspect, like the mindfulness of breathing, to be aware, mindful of the process of inhalation and exhalation. The postures of the body, here comes the asana, for example, in the yogic sense. Also, the mindfulness with clear comprehension, the reflection of repulsiveness of the body, mindfulness of the reflection on the material elements, and the nine cemetery contemplation, which turns the attention to the process of death as reminding of impermanence. So the second one, the mindfulness of feelings, Vedana, it concerns the pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral sensations or feelings. The mindfulness of the mind itself is related to the state of consciousness, like distracted, concentrated, joyful, and different states of the mind. And the last one, the mindfulness of mental phenomena, karma, smriti. So they are observing mental processes, which can be the so-called five hindrances, five aggregates of clinging to material form, feeling, perception, formation, and so on, in Tibetan, and the six internal and external sense bases, and so on, and the so-called seven factors of enlightenment, which again are strongly connected with mindfulness. So mindfulness is one of these seven factors of awakening, or sapta Dhyanga. They're based on the Sutta Pitaka Samyutta Nikaya, another important text in Theravada tradition, which refer to wholesome, mundane factors leading to enlightenment. And in the Abhidhamma, Kosha, in the Pali commentaries, they tend to refer to supramundane factors, which are concurrent with enlightenment. And here you can see the fourth of them. The first one comes the mindfulness, smriti, which here means to maintain awareness of reality, in particular the teachings, Dharma itself. And after that comes the investigation of the nature of reality, the virya, the energy, the power, the effort, joy, relaxation, order, tranquility, concentration, samadhi, again, equanimity, and so on. So this is another important classification where the mindfulness takes place. And a few words, again, very briefly about mindfulness in the context of Mahayana Buddhism, where it refers to clear awareness, but also integrated with the bodhisattva ethics, with shunyata, with emptiness, with karuna, compassion. And here we have some key developments, particularly unique for this tradition. First of all, mindfulness is a support for the wisdom. We know the fundamental Prajnaparamita Sutras, for example, where the understanding of shunyata is the key point. And one way is to be aware, to develop mindfulness in order to be able to comprehend shunyata or shunyata, the emptiness of emptiness, and so on. So mindfulness helps one see that all phenomena are empty, inherent existence. Another key point is, for example, as Shantideva, it's in Bodhicharyavatara, meditation is connected with the ethical conduct, especially in guarding the mind against conflicting emotions. Or mindfulness becomes less object focused and more about maintaining awareness in daily life for the benefit of others. And mindfulness appears also as one of the so-called 51 mental states. They appear originally in Dharma literature again. And within these 51 mental states, mindfulness belongs to the subgroup of the so-called 5 object determinative mental states. So they are stated in the compendium of Dharma, which was composed by the 4th century Indian Saint Asanga. And these 5 mental states, along with mindfulness, are the interest, chanda, appreciation, moksha, concentration again, samadhi, and prajna, samadhi. So mindfulness is part of this complex. And the last important classification is the mindfulness appearing in as one of the so-called 8 antidotes, ashtaprati moksha. So antidotes to the 5 faults, 5 mistakes, which are obstacles to the shamatha meditation. The faults themselves are laziness, forgetting the instruction for meditation, dullness, and under or over attention. And here, as you can see, for example, the first 4, aspiration, exertion, faith, flexibility, they are the antidotes to laziness. So laziness needs a lot of antidotes. And on the 5th place comes mindfulness as an antidote to forgetting the instructions. So here come again to the meaning of mindfulness, to remember, smriti, to glue the mind to the instructions of the Dharma, how to practice, how to train the mind itself. And then we have the awareness, attention, equanimity, again, as a different antidote. And these antidotes, which were mentioned in Maitreya, distinguishing the middle of extremes, here the mindfulness has this focus on the remembering the instructions. And I will give only one more detailed explanation based on the sutras, particularly one sutra, the inquiry of Lokadara. It's a Mahayana sutra, where we can see the application of mindfulness. So this application of mindfulness appears in discourse between Bodhisattva Lokadara and the Buddha himself, stated in this sutra. And here in this text, Bodhisattva Lokadara asked the Buddha to explain the proper way for Bodhisattva to discern the characteristic of phenomena and employ the knowledge to attain awakening. In reply, the Buddha teaches how to understand the lack of inherent existence of phenomena. As part of the teachings, Buddha explains in detail the 4 applications of mindfulness, along with non-existence of the aggregates, the elements, the sense sources, and dependently originating phenomena. And here some short quotation from the sutra, which explain this application of mindfulness. For example, in the 6th chapter of the sutra, the application of mindfulness to the body is explained in this way. Buddha says, Lokadara, when bodhisattvas, great beings, practice contemplation of the body in relation to the body, they accurately contemplate the characteristics of the body. The body is characterized as impermanent, painful, tormented by suffering, fleeting, and destructible. And Lokadara, Bodhisattva great beings who thus contemplate the body in relation to the body and comprehend its true characteristic, will dispel and disrupt any clinging or attachment to the body, thus causing their mindfulness to immediately settle upon the body in the proper manner. They are then called practitioners who contemplate the body in relation to the body. And the application of mindfulness feeling are explained in the sutra following way. When Bodhisattva great beings contemplate the three varieties of feelings, painful feelings, pleasurable feelings, and feelings that are neither painful nor pleasurable, they understand that they do not come from anywhere and they don't go nowhere. They understand them to be provoked by false conditions and the ripened results of past actions in conjunction with delusion. They understand that feelings arise from false and incorrect conceptuality. The application of the mindfulness to the mind. Bodhisattva great beings contemplate the mind in terms of characteristic of arising, ceasing, remaining, and transitioning. When they contemplate this, they think it does not come from anywhere. It does not go anywhere, since it is born from consciousness and conditions. It is insubstantial and unobservable as any fixed quality. And so on. The last one, very briefly, the mindfulness to the phenomena. Bodhisattvas do not think that any mental phenomena exists internally, externally, or somewhere in between. Moreover, they do not observe mental phenomena, the past, present, or future. All mental phenomena arise from many conditions. They are rooted in mistaken perception and have no true characteristics. That is to say, all mental phenomena are subject to the person. As for the basic nature of mental phenomena, all mental phenomena are devoid of mental phenomena. So it sounds a bit like playing with words, but in reality, if one sitting, contemplating, connect the mind with the breathing, calm the mind, contemplate these ideas in a more practical way, it can work on a deeper level. And at the end, a few words about mindfulness in context of Vajrayana or Dzogchen Mahamudra teachings. In Tibetan Buddhism, mindfulness is developed in a very profound way. So it can be staged in, for example, ordinary mindfulness used in concentration practice, and also ethical self-restraint with a strict discipline, or samaya, damsik, the vows that we are taking. It can be developed as a subtle mindfulness used in the tantric visualization practices and recognizing the nature of the mind. Or another deeper level is the so-called non-dual awareness in terms of Dzogchen or Mahamudra teachings, when it transcends the object-based mindfulness, focusing instead on effortless, non-conceptual presence. And here, mindfulness is not about watching, observing the object, but abiding in pure awareness, without distraction, without grasping. For example, in the Mahamudra teachings, there are said to be four kinds of mindfulness: deliberate mindfulness, effortless mindfulness, genuine mindfulness, continuum mindfulness, and supreme king-like mindfulness. And here, any theory on that will sound more and more abstract if they are cut from practice, from the tradition, from the instructions, and so on. So that's why I will stop here, concluding with one beautiful example. I see that a bit difficult with the Tibetan script here, but it is a one short poetry of the renowned Dzogchen teacher Nyoshoken Rinpoche, who was the teacher of many of younger generation of lamas, as well as a number of Western Buddhist teachers. And here he compares mindfulness with all essential aspects of Buddha Dharma. Mindfulness, according to Nyoshoken Rinpoche, is the root of the Dharma. Mindfulness is the path, main practice. Mindfulness is a fortress for the mind. Mindfulness is an aid to the wisdom of self-knowing recovery. Mindfulness is a support for Mahamudra, Dzogchen, and Madhyamaka. Lacking mindfulness, we are overcome by negative forces. Lacking mindfulness, we are beset by laziness. Lacking mindfulness, we commit every wrong. Lacking mindfulness, we fail to accomplish our aims. And in the Buddhist path, yoga and mindfulness are not just techniques, they are means of awakening. By bringing mindful attention into every moment, every breath, every thought, we journey closer to the unshakable peace that lies at the heart of all beings. So we can just aspire, let's say, to achieve this inner peace through yoga, through mindfulness, through webcast streaming, whatever can help us to achieve this inner peace and then dedicate it to the world peace, to the peace around us. And I truly believe, and even repeating the words itself, Shanti, 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 Shiva, peace, or Red in Norwegian, or Mir, Bulgarian, whichever language, the vibration of these words create a space for itself, the feeling of innocence. So thank you for this opportunity to pronounce the word peace and to share a little bit short, let's say, talk about the peace from the Buddhist perspective.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Lyudmila Klasanova, for your very insightful lecture. And we have got two questions, one from Mrs. Payal Sarkar and another from Mrs. Arpita Day. They are our scholars. Their questions are, first one is, being a yoga teacher, what you faced in very initial stage in Norway or in Bulgaria? This is the first one.
Excuse me, what is the initial stage? I didn't hear very well. Can you repeat, please? Excuse me, can you repeat the question? It wasn't so clear. I lost some of the words.
Yeah. Oh, am I audible, Dr.
Yes, now.
Klasanova? Am I audible?
Yes, right now.
Yeah, the first question. The first question is from Mrs. Payal Sarkar. She asked, being a yoga teacher, what you faced in very initial stage in Norway or in Bulgaria?
Initial stage
Want to
of
know your experience in very initial
yoga.
stage. Oh, the very first phase of your teaching as a
Of my,
teacher in yoga?
yeah,
What
you
you
mean
faced
my
there? Any obstacles or any good experience or any bad experience?
experience of teaching yoga?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. Yes, understand. So maybe so I have to say a few words how I started the yoga training because it was a long time in 1996 7. So I started my training in the Satyananda school tradition, which was and is still very popular in Bulgaria. So my first yoga teacher, Bulgarian teacher, was trained in the Satyananda tradition. So I first started with more focus on classical yoga and hatha yoga. Then I found Kundalini yoga in the Tantra yoga as a way to develop more broad perspective. Then I have different courses, different study in multi style yoga, let's say. And I started teaching yoga in 2002, first in Bulgaria. For many years, I was teaching mainly in Bulgaria before I started to travel more. And at the moment, being based mostly in Norway, but still I'm traveling quite often to Bulgaria and teaching at both places, having courses, seminars, and so on. Mm, So it's a very difficult to generalize the stage, the situation with teaching yoga here or there. First of all, Bulgaria and Norway, it's like from one side and the other side of the continent, Europe, which not only in terms of distance, but culturally, it requires a lot of differences. So our traditions are different, mentality and everything, which also means that the way we practice yoga, of course, yoga. So coming here to Norway, it requires me a bit to adapt to the mentality of the people here in Norway, for example. So briefly, people have different motivation.
I think Dr. Klasanova, due to any lack of connection, is not in show now. We are waiting for her, and we are discussing on yoga and mindfulness, a path to inner peace. And Mogalmari Buddhist Association and also Tamralit Buddhist and Cultural Center and also Atisha Dipanakar Memorial Complex and Relics Stupa are jointly organizing such relevant lecture, relevant lectures or maybe a lecture series. And our viewers, yesterday we had a lecture by Mr. William Chan from Taipei, Taiwan. And today we are in a Seoul. And today in our show, yeah, Dr. Klasanova, am I
I
audible
don't
now?
know. Yes, yes. I don't know what happened.
Okay, okay, okay. So it was the first question, your experience being a yoga teacher. And second question is, it is from Mrs. Arpita De. We have seen you have worked on Buddhism in Mongolia. Is there any difference in the practicing Buddhism between Mongolia and Russia?
And okay. Thank you for this
Regarding
question.
the practice of Buddhism, yeah, Mongolia and Russia, differentiation.
Regarding the
Regarding the practice of Buddhism,
yes, okay, yes.
is there any,
For
is there any differences?
Mhm. Okay. So I would try to view this Mongolia and Russia. There is some microphones.
Russia and Mongolia. Russia and Mongolia.
Yes, understand, but there is just a little bit noise. So when we talk about Buddhism and in Mongolia and Russia, in both cases we talk about Tibetan Buddhism first of all, and mainly the Gelug tradition. So in Tibetan Buddhism, we have four main schools, like Nyingma, the oldest one, Sakya, Kagyu, and Gelug. So among these four school of Tibetan Buddhism, Gelug, the tradition which is basically related with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, as we know, uh, it was mm, spread mostly in Mongolia and Russia. So related with the Gelug tradition, which it comes from the Dzongkhapa tradition and focus extremely on the monastic education. So this particular part of Tibetan tradition and mostly in Gelugpa lineage was spread both in Mongolia and Russia. And when we speak about Russia, so I guess you all know in Russia there are three republics which are officially Buddhist republic, even though they have a different culturally, geographical, linguistic characteristics. These three republics are Kalmykia, which is in the European part of Russia, in the Caspian Sea. So they speak Kalmyk language, or they are Oirats, the tribes of Oirats who came to this region of Europe, this part of Europe. And the other two republics are Buryatia and Tuva. Buryatia and Tuva is two Buddhist republics in Russia. They are close to Siberia. They're in Siberia, close to the Baikal Lake. And even though they are close to each other, closer to Mongolia, they have, for example, different languages. So the Buryat language, which is based on the Mongolian, and Tuvan language based on the Turk, uh, Turk language. They have different language, but what combines them is is Buddhism, basically. And again, the Tibetan Vajrayana Gelug tradition-based Buddhism, which in this region, especially Buryatia and Kalmykia, Buryatia and Tuva, is, and Mongolia, this is common between Buryatia, Mongolia, and Tuva, is very strongly related with the local traditions like a shamanic tradition. You're aware of the strong shamanism which was popular in this area. And I've been to all of these three republics, and I did experience myself and saw how this shamanic tradition are mixed with Buddhist tradition in a very unique, impressive ways. So in a way, yes, Buddhism in terms of the practice, it's similar, particularly to Buryatia, Tuva, in Russia and Mongolia. But Buddhism in Russia is not only in these three republics. So in Moscow, in St. Petersburg, they have, for example, in St. Petersburg, this big monastery. So there are many practitioners in the north, in Siberia, other regions, and so on. But they are very, very similar, let's say, based on the same tradition of Tibetan Vajrayana tradition, which does not mean that there are not other traditions like Nyingma and Kagyu, but Gelug is the main.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Klasanova. Thank you very much on behalf of Mogalmari Association and also Tamralip, the Buddhist and Cultural Center, and Atisha Dipanakar Memorial Complex and Relics Stupa. And for your information, ma'am, Atisha Dipankar Memorial Complex and Relics Stupa, which is situated in Bangladesh, and most venerable Karunananda Mahathir is in charge of this monastery. He is very much with our many initiative, and he is also watching this show too, and conveyed his best blessings and best wishes. So, uh, We'll wish that we'll meet again with another topic. And thank you very much. Namo
Thank you.
Buddhaya.
Namo Buddhaya. Thank you.